I'm back after a couple of weeks away. We're back with another Cover Price Top 10. Let's jump into it in this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hey there, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. And we're going to get into the Cover Price Top 10 list for the week of August 26th. Cover Price is I don't get paid by them. I pay them. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, Cover Price is a comic book grading tool where they grade both raw and graded comic books. And grading raw comics or giving prices for raw comic books is something a little bit unique and useful because most books aren't worth getting graded. And they also put together these lists, and they come up with the top 10 books that moved the most in the aftermarket in the last week. So let's jump into that list. And coming at number 10 is an old friend, Infamous Iron Man, number 1 by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev. This is the book in which Tony Stark, who is recently deceased in the storyline here, becomes an AI that Stark had uploaded his consciousness and created an AI. And then Dr. Doom takes on the mantle of Iron Man. This book has been hot since Robert Downey Jr. was announced to be playing Dr. Doom in the upcoming Avengers Doomsday movie, which ironically hasn't moved the price of Superman Man of Steel 18. But I mean, this is a book that has, was kind of like hit highs for a while, then was languishing, and now you got to pay $50, $200 plus for a 9.8. Has cooled down a little bit in the 9.8 range, but it was up over 300 recently. But this is a book that was a comic boom baby, as people are speculating on it, more so for the Tony Stark AI than for the Dr. Doom as Iron Man. After Tony Stark was dead in Avengers Endgame, that maybe Robert Downey Jr. would make his comeback as AI. Anyway, it hit its height and then it went down, and it was like a $50 9.8. And then all of a sudden, Robert Downey Jr. gets on stage at Hall H, and bam, it goes from $60 to $250 overnight. There are an increasing number of copies of this book, 737 universal copies, 558, or about 3/4 of them are 9.8s. I sold mine. As soon as I don't see this long term. I did start reading the storyline while I was on vacation. It's interesting. I want to get through the whole series, but I don't know if this is the direction they're going to be going in. I think it just may be that Robert Downey Jr. played Iron Man and is going to be playing Victor Von Doom. Moving on to number 9 on the list, and it is an ever-present favorite, Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars number 8, with the Venom 3 movie coming out this year, right? Maybe we'll connect to a Spider-Man. Sony Spider-Verse doesn't have a Spider-Man, but this is one of the most popular books of the Copper Age. And if we look at this, it's come down in value since the comic boom. It was pretty steady in the $700 range and is now down about $500. But this book sells consistently. It is a well sought after key. There are 26,000 universal copies, almost 6,000 9.8s, which is 22% of the census. There are a couple dozen 9.9s and 5.10s. I don't have those. Let's move on to number 8 on the list, and it's Power Fantasy, a recent book by Image Comics, which came out earlier this month. This is the regular cover. I can't imagine that 9.8s are to market yet, but maybe pre-sales. It's just, I think, one of those Image titles that now people want to read. And $10 for a high-grade copy is not unreasonable. I don't know that much more about it. Let's move on to number 7. It's Avengers number 55, which is the first appearance of Ultron, and it has been announced that James Spader will be reprising his role in the Vision Quest. Are they still calling it Vision Quest series that maybe supposedly is coming out? Who knows? This is a book from the Silver Age, and you're gonna have to pay more than $100 for a nice copy. And if you want a 9.8, $2,400. But I took a look on Go Collect at the 8.5, which is one of the more popular grades. And this book has kind of been consistent in that grade in the $200-$300 range. It dipped down to about 150 and is starting to climb back closer to 200 recently. Even though the last couple of sales are less than the sales from last month. You'll see 2,500 copies on the census. To get in the top 10%, you'd need a 9.6, 9.4, top 12%. And this is graded all the way down to 0.5s. I don't really think that it's worth grading at a 0.5, but that is just me. First appearance of Ultron. And this, of course, is a book from 1968. Hard to get those books moving very rapidly. Let's move to, where are we? 6 on the list, and it's Uncanny X-Men number 251, this classic cover by Mark Silvestri, because of a brief scene in the Wolverine Deadpool movie. Always been a popular cover, but I'm kind of surprised that it has maintained this heat in the market. If you're an X-Men collector, you probably want this book at a 9.8. If you can get it, it's a book from 1989, so not impossible to get a 9.8, but only 925 universal copies, and only a quarter of them are 9.8s. This is, a book that historically hasn't really sold for high values in anything lower than a 9.8. We could see in the comic boom, at one point in time, for a brief moment, it jumped up to $660, and it was selling for 200 plus, and never really went that low in a 9.8 under 150, and now it is back up. The most recent sales in excess of $300. Will it stay there? I don't think so. I don't think this has long-term legs. There's nothing else that's going to propel this book past what we saw in that movie. And other than it's just a classic cover and people want it. So it's a great book to have. I'm going to be hunting this in a 9.8. I have raw copies all over the place of this book. I got to dig out. So let's go to number 5. And another classic, Daredevil number 181, the first appearance or the death of Elektra. Not completely sure why this book made the list. I don't know what we're getting much more from Elektra. You have to pay about 30 bones for a nice copy of this. But this is a double-sized issue, so a little bit harder to get in that 9.8. But that being said, the 9.8s, again, spiked in the comic boom. They went from, where were they? Like $140, let's say, in late 2020. And then they jumped up to about $350. And they've been tracking in the downward trend. And now, the last sale at auction went for $108, but about a $130, $140 book. You can look back. Wow, the Heritage auction for $312. I don't know what went on there. And then, that's an aberration, usually in the $120, $130 range for this book. It is a key that that Miller run is very collectible. 6,400 on the census, about a quarter of them in 9.8. And then let's move to, this is number 4, Deadpool number 31, the first appearance of Deadpool's daughter, Ellie Camacho. Who is the Deadpool 2099, I believe. This is a book from 2014 that, $25 book, $175 in a 9.8. Not a lot of history of this book. And there are only 61 on the census. 40 of the 61 are 9.8s. I imagine this is going to grow as this book stays hot and people discover it. And this is a book that has been sitting around for 10 years without a lot of traction in the aftermarket. And now people are noticing it because they are using the character again in the comics. Then the unbelievable Gwenpool number 1. This was number 1 on the list last week, I believe. Not her first appearance. A book, $10, $15 book, upwards of $100 in a 9.8. If we look at 9.8s historically, at one point they went up for $150, but this is a book that's just like kind of reaching at $100. See an auction in June went for 35. Again, a book that's kind of been sitting around. I prefer the first appearance of Gwenpool and Howard the Duck #1. You got to get the right Howard the Duck #1. There were 2 Howard the Duck series from the same year. It's very confusing. So there are 2 Howard the Duck #1s from, I think it's 2014. And this is not a whole lot going on other than there was, if we look at last week's write-up about it, no, she was #2. That's right. Gwenpool is a dedicated skin in Fortnite. So that's kind of propelling this book. Again, I think the big question is, will we ever see Gwenpool in the MCU? I don't know. That's a big I don't know. That, kind of a niche character. So can't rule it out, but who knows? Let's go to #2 on the list, and it's Wolverine Revenge #1, the Red Band edition. This very popular. This is a Tales from the Crypt 39 homage. It's a 1 in 25. No 9/8 yet. $40-$50 to get a copy. It's weird to get fine copies. What happened to that book? Maybe the comic store probably returned it for damages and then got had a damaged copy. Yeah, I mean, people love these old EC homages, and there definitely is a market for them right now, and they are 1 in 25 variants, so they're harder to come by. So yeah, keep an eye on that. Something that people are interested in. Now let's go to #1 on the list, and this is a really interesting one. It's Crossed #0. This is from Avatar Press in 2008. Ain't much of that out there. This is probably buried in indie boxes all over the place. $40 or so. See, a 9.4 just sold for $215. There aren't many of that out there, at least slabbed. Just keep your eyes open for this book rather than jumping after it. This was written by Garth Ennis, and reportedly he's written a screenplay, and the independent producer Six Studios is looking to produce the movie based on the original series that Ennis had written back in the day. And this is one of those instances where, and if we look at this, there's only 2 copies sold ever. They were both back in 2021 in 9/8. There's no census discovered. that is like, just a very hard to find book. And one of the things about independent books is, I think for studios, it's much easier to go to a creator and work a deal rather than try to work a deal for a story through Marvel or DC, certainly. And they already have their own things going. So independent producers are approaching people like Robert Kirkman and The Walking Dead and Invincible and things like The Boys. And this, you can get the deal directly with the creator. And this is also why creators are going to the independents, so that they own their own IP. And in the very off chance that it does become a property, they can make money. Now, the problem with this long term is, I mean, look at, something like Paper Girls. 1 season, and they didn't come back for a second season, never finished the story. If this is a self-contained story, it's a little bit different. And the plus on this is the fact that Ennis is involved in the screenplay of it. So that's going to do it at our look at the top 10 list for this week. I'd like to thank you all for stopping by. You can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying, until next time, enjoy your comics.